Worked since I was 16 and did all the housework while my siblings relaxed. When I confronted them, my parents said, "They deserve better, but you don't." So the next day I moved out and changed me phone number. I sat in my rented apartment, looking around at my few belongings scattered across the room. The small bookshelf with my cookbook collection. The second-hand coffee table I'd found at a thrift store. The potted plant my coworker had given me as a housewarming gift. Not much to show for 24 years of life, but as I took it all in, a smile spread across my face. I felt free. To understand how I got here, though, you'd have to go back to when I was 7 years old. That's when everything changed. That's when my parents had the twins. I remember the day Mom and Dad brought Emma and Ethan home. I was so excited to be a big sister. Dad had his arm around my shoulder as we stood in the nursery, looking down at the two tiny bundles. "You're quite grown up now, Lila," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "These two are going to need their big sister to help take care of them." I nodded eagerly, puffing up my chest with pride. I had no idea what those words really meant. It started small. Setting the table while Mom fed the twins, picking up toys from the living room floor, fetching diapers when Dad called for them. "Lila, be a good girl and help dust the coffee table," Mom would say, bouncing a fussy Ethan on her hip. "Lila, can you put these clothes away?" Dad would ask, while trying to rock Emma to sleep. At first, I liked feeling helpful and important. I'd scurry around the house, completing my small tasks with a sense of accomplishment. But as I got older, those tasks multiplied. By 10, I was watching the twins while my parents ran errands. "Keep an eye on your brother and sister," Mom would say, grabbing her purse. "We'll be back in a few hours." "But Katie invited me to play at the park," I'd say, already knowing the answer. "Your brother and sister need you here, Lila. You can play with your friends another time." There never seemed to be another time. The twins needed me to watch them, to feed them snacks, to make sure they didn't hurt themselves. I loved Emma and Ethan, I really did, but I couldn't help noticing how different things were for them. My 11th birthday was a stark reminder. Mom bought a small cake from the grocery store. Dad gave me a used video game he'd found on sale. My one friend who was allowed to come over gave me a bracelet she'd made herself. We ate cake, played one board game, and then Mom said it was getting late. A month later, the twins turned 4. There were balloon animals and face painting. A custom cake with their names spelled out in frosting. 15 kids from their preschool running around our backyard. And gifts. So many gifts. New toys, clothes, games. After everyone left, I spent 2 hours cleaning up wrapping paper, food scraps, and party decorations while Emma and Ethan played with their new toys. By 13, I was basically running our household. Every morning, I'd wake up the twins, help them get dressed, make them breakfast, and pack their lunches. I'd walk them to elementary school before rushing to make it to my middle school on time. After school, I'd pick them up, help with their homework, cook dinner, clean the house, and do my own schoolwork late into the night. Mom and Dad both worked full-time jobs and seemed to forget I was still a kid too. When I turned 16, everything got worse. Mom and Dad called me into the kitchen for a family meeting, though the twins weren't included. "Lila, we need to discuss something important," Dad said, his face serious. Mom nodded. "We're having some financial difficulties. We need you to get a job after school to help support the family." I blinked in surprise. "But what about my homework? And taking care of Emma and Ethan?" "You'll still need to do those things," Mom said dismissively. "You can find a job with flexible hours." The next day, I applied at the cafe 2 blocks from our house. The owner, Jerry, hired me on the spot when I told him I could work every day after school. I started washing dishes, cleaning tables, and eventually serving customers. Every paycheck went straight to my parents. Every cent. When I asked if I could keep even a small amount for myself, my mother looked at me like I'd suggested burning down the house. "We feed you and put a roof over your head, Lila," she snapped. "The family needs this money." After weeks of building up courage, I finally confronted her again. "I'm working hard. I should at least get some pocket money." She glared at me but finally agreed to give me $100 a week. The way she handed it over, though, like she was doing me some enormous favor, made it clear she thought I was being unreasonable. Despite working nearly 30 hours a week, I was still expected to cook, clean, and take care of the twins. One evening, I dragged myself home after a particularly busy shift. My whole body ached, and all I wanted was to eat something and fall into bed. When I walked in, I found my parents and the twins sitting at the dinner table, all of them glaring at me. "What's going on?" I asked, dropping my backpack by the door. "We're hungry," Mom said accusingly. "You didn't make dinner." I stared at them, not comprehending what I was hearing. "I've been at school and then work all day." "That's no excuse," Dad chimed in. "You know dinner is your responsibility." Something snapped inside me. For the first time in my life, I raised my voice at them. "Are you serious? I went to school, then worked for 6 hours straight. You're adults. The twins are 9. None of you could figure out how to make a sandwich? The shocked silence that followed my outburst was almost satisfying. Then Mom stood up, her face hard. Don't you dare speak to us that way. This is our house, and you will show respect. Go to your room. No dinner for you tonight. As I watched, Dad picked up the phone and ordered 2 pizzas for them and the twins. Not for me. I made myself a cup of tea, washed everyone's dishes after they'd eaten their pizza, and went to my room, my stomach growling. My high school graduation should have been a milestone. Most of my classmates had parents throwing parties, buying them gifts, or planning for college. Me? I paid for my own graduation dress with the tiny bit of money I'd managed to save from my weekly allowance. The day of graduation, my parents showed up just before the ceremony started. They sat through the speeches and applauded politely when I walked across the stage to get my diploma. As soon as it ended, Mom checked her watch. We need to get going, she said as I approached them. Diploma in hand, Ethan has a soccer game in an hour. And just like that, they were gone. I stood in my blue dress among my celebrating classmates, completely alone. That night, while my classmates went to after parties and celebrations, I worked my shift at the cafe. Jerry, the owner, was surprised to see me. Lila, isn't today your graduation? What are you doing here? I shrugged. I need the money. He watched me for a moment, then said, you know, you're one of my best employees, always on time, never complain, but you can't build a career in a small cafe like this. I looked up, not sure what to say. My cousin Marco owns a restaurant downtown, a real nice place. He's always looking for good staff, Jerry continued, wiping down the counter. I could put in a word for you, if you want. The pay's better too. 2 weeks later, I started at Marco's restaurant. The work was harder, the hours longer, but the tips were significantly better. My parents were thrilled when they saw my first paycheck, which, of course, I had to hand over to them. My routine changed, but the expectations didn't. Work all day, come home, cook, clean, sleep, repeat. Meanwhile, Emma and Ethan lounged on the couch, played video games, and did absolutely nothing to help. One evening, after a 10-hour shift, I came home to find dirty dishes piled in the sink and laundry scattered all over the floor. Ethan, Emma, I called out, finding them sprawled in front of the TV. Could you guys please help me clean up? Ethan didn't even look away from his game. That's your job. I'm not your maid, I said, my patience wearing thin. You're 12 now. You can help around the house. Emma rolled her eyes. Mom says we don't have to. I brought it up with my parents that night, but the conversation went exactly as I expected. They're too young to worry about housework, Mom said, not looking up from her magazine. I was helping around the house when I was 7, I pointed out. Dad frowned. That was different. You were more mature. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just walked away, wondering how much longer I could live like this. 3 years passed in the same exhausting pattern. I worked at Marco's restaurant, giving almost all my money to my parents. I kept just enough to buy necessities, clothes when my old ones wore out, a new phone when my ancient one finally died. I was good at my job. Really good. The customers liked me, the other staff respected me, and Marco noticed. One slow afternoon, Marco called me into his office. I was afraid I'd done something wrong, but he was smiling when I came in. Lila, he said, leaning back in his chair, how long do you want to be a waitress? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I've been watching you. You've memorized every dish on the menu. You know which wines pair with which meals. I've seen you eyeing the kitchen, watching the chefs work. I felt my face grow hot. I'm just curious about the cooking. Marco nodded. That's what I thought. Listen, I've got a proposal for you. I'm willing to pay for cooking courses. You could train to be a cook and work in my kitchen. The pay is better, the hours more regular. What do you think? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No one had ever invested in me before. No one had ever offered me a path forward. That night, I practically floated home. For the first time, I had something that was mine, a potential future that I could see and touch. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. During dinner, which I had cooked, as usual, I shared my news. Marco offered to pay for me to take cooking courses, I said. Unable to keep the excitement from my voice, I could become a chef at the restaurant. I expected congratulations. What I got was a frown from my mother. What about your hours here at home? She asked. Who's going to cook and clean while you're at these classes? My excitement deflated like a punctured balloon. I'd still help out. The classes would just be a few nights a week. We rely on you, Lila, Dad said, as if I didn't know that. The house doesn't run itself. I looked at Emma and Ethan, now 15, perfectly capable of helping but never asked to. Something hardened inside me. I'm taking the courses, I said firmly. This is important to me. My parents exchanged glances but didn't argue further. They could see I wasn't backing down. The cooking courses were intense but exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was doing something purely for myself. I learned knife skills, sauce techniques, how to balance flavors. I excelled in every class. At work, I made a friend, Zoe, a new waitress who started around the same time I began my courses. She was funny, outspoken, and didn't take crap from anyone. "So you live with your parents?" she asked one day during our break. "Yeah, with my younger brother and sister too." "And do you pay rent?" I shifted uncomfortably. "Not exactly. I give them most of my paycheck." Zoe's eyebrows shot up. "Most? Like how much?" "Almost all of it. I keep just enough for basic stuff." "And you cook and clean for them too?" "While working full-time and taking these classes?" When she put it like that, it sounded absurd. I tried to explain our family dynamic, how I'd always been expected to help out, how my siblings were different. Zoe listened, her expression growing more horrified with each word. "Lila," she said when I finished, "that's not normal. That's not okay. Your family is taking advantage of you." "They're my family," I said weakly. "So what? Family is supposed to support each other, not use one person as a personal servant and ATM." She leaned forward. "You need to get out of there. Live your own life." I laughed it off, but her words stuck with me. Was I really being taken advantage of? Was what my family asked of me truly that unreasonable? I didn't have to wait long for the answer. The twins' 16th birthday arrived with all the fanfare I'd come to expect. Mom ordered a custom cake shaped like a video game controller for Ethan and decorated with roses for Emma. Dad hung streamers and balloons throughout the house. They invited 20 of the twins' friends, ordered catering, and spent weeks planning the perfect gifts. I was scheduled to work that day, not by accident. Over the years, I'd learned to volunteer for shifts during family celebrations. It hurt less to be absent than to be present but invisible. My shift at the restaurant was busy, which was a blessing. The constant movement kept my mind occupied, away from thoughts of what was happening at home. By the time I clocked out, I was exhausted but hungry. I hadn't had a chance to eat during my shift. When I got home, the party was winding down. A few of the twins' friends were still hanging around, music was playing, and the house looked like a tornado had hit it. I slipped in through the kitchen door, hoping to grab some food before tackling the mess. I filled a plate with leftover pizza and took a seat at the kitchen table. Just as I was about to take my first bite, Mom walked in. "Oh good, you're home," she said, pulling the plate away from me. "The kids made a mess in the living room. Can you start cleaning up?" I stared at her, my empty stomach clenching. "Mom, I haven't eaten all day. I just want to have something first. The guests are about to leave. I need you to clean now." Her tone left no room for argument. I felt something inside me shift. "I'm hungry. I'm going to eat first." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Lila, now." I reached for my plate, but she snatched it away completely. "Now, Lila, the dishes can wait until after you've cleaned." That was the moment, the exact moment when something in me broke. I stood up slowly, looking my mother directly in the eyes. "I've been working all day," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I'm going to eat first." Before she could respond, Dad walked in with Emma and Ethan trailing behind him, all smiles and excitement. "Look what we got." Ethan held up the newest smartphone model, one that had just been released and cost nearly $1,000. "And we both got laptops too," Emma added, beaming. "The new MacBooks." I looked from their expensive gifts to my empty stomach to the mess I was expected to clean, and something just snapped. "Congratulations," I said, my voice louder than intended. "When do you two start working after school?" The room went silent. Emma and Ethan looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "What?" Ethan asked. "Working. Jobs, you know, like I've been doing since I was 16. I looked at my parents. "When do they start contributing to the family?" My parents exchanged glances, and then, unbelievably, they smiled. "Lila," Dad said in a condescending tone, "your brother and sister have bright futures ahead of them. They need to focus on school, not work." "And I didn't have a bright future?" I asked, my voice cracking. Mom put her arm around Emma's shoulders. "They deserve the best. Your duty is to work and help your family." There it was, plain as day. My siblings deserved the best. I deserved duty. "I see," I said quietly. Mom nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now please start cleaning up. The living room is a disaster." I went to the sink and began washing dishes mechanically, while behind me, my family started sorting through gifts and planning a vacation, one that, as usual, didn't include me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at my ceiling, thinking about everything Zoe had said, everything I'd experienced, everything I finally understood with perfect clarity. Nothing was going to change. Not unless I changed it. By morning, my decision was made. I waited until everyone left, Mom and Dad to work, Emma and Ethan to school. Then I packed my belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. It didn't take long. After 23 years in this house, I had shockingly little to show for it. I called Zoe, praying she'd answer. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was cheerful. "Remember when you said I should leave my parents' house?" My voice was shaking. There was a pause. "Yeah? I'm doing it, today, right now. But I need somewhere to go." "Holy shit, Lila. Come to my place. I've got a spare bedroom. You can stay as long as you need." I hung up, took one last look around my bedroom, and walked out. I didn't leave a note. Why bother? They'd figure it out when they came home to a dirty house and no dinner. The taxi driver helped me load my bags. As we pulled away from the house I'd lived in my entire life, I expected to feel something: sadness, regret, nostalgia. But all I felt was relief. Zoe was waiting for me when the taxi pulled up to her apartment building. She rushed out to help with my bags, hugging me fiercely once we got everything inside. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "This is a big step." Her apartment was small but cozy, decorated with colorful throws and posters from concerts she'd attended. The spare room had just enough space for a bed and a small dresser. But it was more than enough. "I'll pay rent," I said as I unpacked my clothes. "Half, or whatever's fair." Zoe nodded. "We'll figure it out, no rush." We went to work together that afternoon. I felt lighter, like I'd shed a heavy coat I'd been wearing for years. Marco noticed the change immediately. "You look different today," he said when I arrived at the restaurant. I smiled. I moved out of my parents' house. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. "Good for you. Ready for your shift?" By the time we finished work that evening, my phone had 20 missed calls from my parents. I showed Zoe. "You going to answer?" she asked. "Not yet." We stopped at a liquor store on the way home and bought a bottle of cheap red wine. Back at the apartment, we sat on her tiny balcony, drinking from mismatched mugs and toasting my freedom. At 10 p.m., my phone rang again. My mother's name flashed on the screen. "I should answer," I said, staring at the phone, "just to get it over with." Zoe nodded encouragingly. I took a deep breath and hit accept. "Hello? Where the hell are you?" My mother's voice was shrill with panic and anger. "The house is a mess. There's no dinner. We've been calling for hours." "I moved out," I said calmly. There was a beat of silence. "What do you mean moved out?" "I packed my things and left. I'm not coming back." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "You can't just leave. Who's going to cook and clean?" "Who's going to?" "You could try doing it yourself," I interrupted. "Or maybe Emma and Ethan could help, since they're the same age I was when I started working." "Lila," her tone changed, becoming conciliatory, "come home. We need to talk about this properly." "No," I said, and hung up. The calls and texts continued for hours. I turned off my phone. "How do you feel?" Zoe asked as we finished the wine. I thought about it. Free, scared, guilty, relieved, all of it at once. She clinked her mug against mine. "That sounds about right." The next day, my parents were waiting outside the restaurant when my shift ended. I'd been expecting them. Zoe offered to stay, but I told her to go ahead. This was something I needed to handle alone. They approached as soon as they spotted me. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Dad looked angry. "Lila, we need to talk," Dad said, trying to take my arm. I stepped back. "What about?" Mom's face crumpled. "We've thought everything over, sweetheart. We realize we've been putting too much pressure on you, making you do too much work. We want you to come home. We'll make changes, I promise." I looked at them both, really looked at them. Their worried expressions, their pleading eyes. And something about it rang false. "Tell me," I said slowly, "are you more upset that I'm gone, or that my paycheck is gone?" Mom's face changed just for a second, but it was enough. "That's not fair. We're your family. We're counting on your salary." There it was, the truth. "I'm not coming back," I said, and turned to walk away. "You selfish girl," Mom called after me, "after everything we've done for you." I kept walking, their words fading behind me. A year passed quickly. I lived with Zoe, paid my share of the rent, and saved the rest of my money. Working as a cook brought me more satisfaction than I'd ever known. Creating dishes, seeing customers enjoy my food, being valued for my skills rather than taken for granted. I'd almost forgotten about my family when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Hello? Lila, it's Mom." I nearly hung up. "What do you want?" "We need to talk about the twins' college tuition," she said, her voice all business. "They'll be starting college next fall. We need your help paying for it." The audacity was breathtaking. "You're joking, right?" "This isn't funny, Lila. Family helps family. You need to contribute." "Like how you helped me with college?" I asked. "Oh, wait, you didn't. I never even got to go." "That was different," she insisted. "The twins have real potential. I'd spent years trying to please this woman, years believing I was somehow less deserving than my siblings. But not anymore. I'm not paying for their college, I said firmly. I'm not giving you another cent, ever. You selfish, ungrateful. I've been supporting this family since I was 16. I cut her off. I cooked, cleaned, and gave you almost every dollar I earned. You never thanked me, never appreciated me, never treated me like I mattered. I'm done. She launched into a tirade about family obligation and how I was letting everyone down. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and hung up. I blocked her number, then changed my own for good measure. Whatever connection had remained between us was finally, completely severed. 2 months after that final call, I found my own apartment. It was small, just a studio with a kitchenette and bathroom, but it was mine. Zoe helped me move in, and we celebrated with takeout on my second-hand furniture. To independence, she toasted, raising her soda can. To choosing myself, I replied. Now, sitting in my rented apartment, looking at my few belongings, I feel truly free. Yesterday, Marco promoted me to assistant chef. I'm saving for culinary school. For the first time, I'm building a future based on what I want. I don't miss my family. Sometimes I wonder about Emma and Ethan, if they're learning to cook and clean, if they've taken jobs to help with their college tuition. Mostly, though, I hope they learn what took me too long to understand, that love shouldn't be conditional, that family shouldn't exploit you, that you have value beyond what you can do for others.